Long ago, in a distant kingdom, there lived a young king named David. At just 25, he had inherited the throne after his father's passing. Although brave and intelligent, David was still new to leadership, and ruling a kingdom was no simple task. Thankfully, by his side stood Edward, a wise teacher who had guided him since childhood. Edward had not only taught David about the world, but also about the deeper values of kindness, patience, and wisdom. After the old king's death, Edward became the chief minister and David's most trusted advisor. Under their combined leadership, the kingdom flourished until one fateful year. A severe food crisis struck the land. It turned out that an error in the weather forecast, a mistake made by Edward, had led to poor preparations. When David learned of this, his frustration boiled over. Blinded by anger, he forgot all the years of loyalty and wisdom Edward had given him. In a moment of rage, the young king ordered, "Leave the kingdom at once. Never return." Edward, heartbroken but calm, quietly accepted his fate. He bowed deeply, said no word in defense, and left the palace that had been his home for decades. A new life in silence. Far from the capital, Edward found a small village near the mountains. There, he chose to live simply as a humble farmer. Though he still had some wealth, he decided to share the villagers' daily struggles, planting, harvesting, and helping settle small disputes. His kindness and wisdom soon earned him the respect and love of everyone in the village. Meanwhile, back in the palace, King David began to realize what he had lost. Without Edward's guidance, he struggled with difficult decisions. The once stable kingdom now faced confusion, and regret began to weigh heavily on his heart. How could I have sent him away in anger? If only I had listened before reacting. Overcome with guilt, David sent his soldiers across the land to search for Edward. Weeks passed, but no one could find any trace of him. The jar of wisdom, then one day, the king remembered one of Edward's old lessons, that true wisdom reveals itself through patience. So he devised a clever plan to test whether any trace of Edward's wisdom remained in his kingdom. He sent out a clay jar and a letter to every village. The letter read, "Within 1 month, return this jar filled with wisdom. Those who fail must fill it with jewels instead." The villagers were baffled by the strange command. How could anyone fill a jar with wisdom? In the small village where Edward now lived, the village leader, completely confused, brought the jar to him. "Sir," he said anxiously, "the king demands this jar be filled with wisdom. What can we do? We have no jewels to replace it." Edward listened quietly, then smiled. "Don't worry," he said calmly. "Give me the jar. I promise it will be filled with wisdom in time." The pumpkin in the jar. For several days, Edward thought deeply. One morning, while tending his garden, he noticed a tiny pumpkin vine nearby. A simple idea began to grow in his mind. He gently placed a small pumpkin flower inside the clay jar without cutting it from the vine. Day after day, he watered it patiently. As the weeks passed, the pumpkin grew larger and larger until it completely filled the jar and could no longer be removed. When the time came, Edward cut the vine and sealed the jar. Then he sent it to the palace as the king had requested. The king's realization when King David received the jar, he was astonished. Inside, it was a perfectly grown pumpkin, a symbol of patience, intelligence, and quiet creativity. He smiled, recognizing the brilliance behind the act. "Only one man in this kingdom could have thought of this," he said softly. "Edward, my teacher." Filled with emotion, David set out himself to find Edward, not as a king seeking a servant, but as a student seeking forgiveness. When he finally met his old mentor again, tears filled his eyes. He knelt before Edward and said, "Forgive me. My anger blinded me, and I lost both a friend and my wisdom." Edward gently placed a hand on his shoulder and said, "We all make mistakes, my son. What matters is that you've learned the value of patience." Moral of the story. This story reminds us of a timeless truth. Never make decisions in anger. Strong emotions cloud our judgment, often leading to regret. When faced with problems, take a moment to pause, breathe, and think. A calm and patient mind can find solutions that an angry heart never will. Wisdom isn't found in haste. It grows slowly, like the pumpkin in Edward's jar. Patience is not weakness. It is strength under control.